this season of Lent, the title of the meditations that I am curating is The Things We Carry. Because that's what we as humans do. We carry things. We carry things that bring us joy and add to the flourishing of our lives. And we carry things that continue to wound us. I want to encourage you while I am curating these meditations that follow the ancient path of the prophets, I'm also curating a playlist. And so if you would like, I invite you to find the song Things We Carry by Wyatt Creed. And just sit with that song for a moment. Because I think the song invites us to do exactly what I am inviting you to do this season, which is to become aware of the things that we carry. Well, we begin this series by looking at the prophet Amos. Now, Amos did not ask to carry this message to the people. He did not ask to carry the weight of this message. In fact, he told God, I am not a prophet. I'm a peasant. I simply tend to trees and to animals. And then he realized God was calling him, which he lived in the southern kingdom of Judah at the time. And God was telling him that his message was for the northern kingdom of Israel. And so that was another no. I'm not even from that area, God. You can't send me there. Well, God gave Amos eyes to see what Israel could not see in themselves, or what they chose to not see, or what they turned away from. Amos saw how the rich were exploiting the poor. Now, what was happening is that the poor were getting into greater and greater debt. And the rich, the urban elite, were taking advantage of what was happening and coming in and taking over the land. So these once landowners were now slaves to their more wealthy masters. Amos cries out, you who oppress the poor, who crush the needy, who say to their husbands, bring me something to drink. The time will come when all of this will come to an end. Well, at the beginning of Amos's ministry, it was a time of great peace and prosperity. They were flourishing. They were expanding. They were in a time where they had great wealth. And the urban elite were the ones that were prospering the most. And so they thought the story that they were telling themselves is, we're following God because we are enjoying peace and prosperity. This day of Yahweh is really great and glorious, and it will last forever. And so Amos comes on the scene, and he says that the day of Yahweh will come, and it will be a day of darkness, not light. As if someone fled from a lion and was met by a bear. Or someone went into the house and rested their hand against the wall and was bitten by a snake. And then God, through the prophet Amos, says to the people, I hate your festivals and your solemn assemblies. Take away the noise of your songs. I will not listen. but let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. God was saying to the people, don't come here and worship me and then turn around and go exploit the poor. Align yourself with the values that we are espousing here in this place, which is justice and righteousness. But of course, the people did not listen. They didn't listen to the prophet Amos. For one, he was a peasant. He didn't have any power. He didn't have a platform on which to share this message. And the people were in a time of great peace and prosperity. And so thinking that this would be gone sometime soon was really not something they wanted to consider. So it was like Amos was ranting into the wind. And if some of them did hear him, well, they just thought he was crazy. They didn't want to listen to this voice on the margin that was telling them that this pleasant time of peace and prosperity will not last forever. Well, if you read the book of Amos, you will notice in the first 4 chapters of the book, all Amos is doing is ranting and raging against the people. When you read the first 4 chapters, it's like, wow, can God's people do anything right? This is anger. Well, my clergy group is reading the book titled Working with Anger by Thupten Chandran. And in this book, she defines anger as 3 things: the inappropriate attention to negative qualities. Second, the inaccurate assessment of reality because it only focuses on the negative and everything else becomes evidence for our point of view. And third, the inaccurate assessment of reality because it only focuses on what is going on with me and mine. Well, I give you an example from my life. There was a time when a person entered our life and was dating our daughter. Now, first off, this young man thought that he had it. He told our daughter, oh, don't worry, we'll get to do anything we want to do because I have a way with charming mothers and they just give me everything that I want. Well, he had not met this mother before. And I have a tendency to be able to smell that. Sneakiness, slyness, the schmoozing from a long way off. And so that was kind of one strike against him. And then there was a second strike, and then there was something really major that happened that broke my heart. The way he treated our daughter just made me livid. And yet my daughter wasn't done with the relationship. And so we had to navigate this for over a year. Now I would tell you, I did not do well. I focused on everything negative that he ever did. Those 3 strikes against him, they played over and over and over in my mind. Yes, this was anger, the inappropriate attention to negative qualities. I couldn't see beyond the negative qualities or the inappropriate or negative ways that he was treating our daughter. And those just played over and over and over in my mind. I also was building a case against him because I was inappropriately focusing all of my attention on these negative qualities. I saw everything else through that lens. and added the smallest and the big things as evidence for my point of view. I also had these imaginings about what our future would be like if he stuck around. And it was all about how it would hurt me, how it would hurt our daughter, how it would change our family. And so it was also the third definition, this inaccurate assessment of reality, because it only focuses on me and mine. And so at that time, I was a part of a group, and we were practicing loving kindness every Wednesday evening. And every Wednesday evening, I would extend loving kindness to this young man. And 9 months went by, and 12 months went by, and I could not stop the movie playing in my mind, the ruminating on these negative qualities. Until finally I became aware that any time I was doing dishes or cooking or mopping the floor, kind of these chores where your mind can wander, anytime I was doing that, I was focused on this situation. And then I woke up one day and realized, wow, is all of that inappropriate attention to negative qualities adding joy to my life? Is it contributing to the growth of the fruits of the Spirit in my life? No, it is simply making me more angry. This is anger. And it took him leaving our daughter and the tears flowing before I could really see this young man in his fullness, to where I could see the hurt and the sadness from these very foundational relationships in his life being broken, that hurt and sadness that he experienced then, he was actually sharing with all of us, but he was too young to be able to know. And then, only then, was I able to send well wishes from my heart to his. Well, Richard Rohr sees that most of our prophets begin in anger, and then the tears begin to flow. And so between chapters 4 and 5 of the book of Amos, yes, in those first 4 chapters, he is ranting and raging and angry at the people, and then he begins to weep. He cries, "Fallen no more to rise, forsaken on her land with no one to raise her up." Amos continues, and he writes that there will be a time when the people will wail in the streets. The farmers will be called to mourn, and those skilled in lamentations will be called upon to wail, and in all the vineyards there shall be weeping. Reading his words, you can almost taste the tears of the people. Reading his words, you can almost feel his tears falling down your cheek. Amos realizes that the tears are dissolving his anger so that he can really see what matters most. Richard Rohr, in his book, Tears of Things, writes this. He says, this way of tears and the deep vulnerability that it expresses is opposed to our normal ways of seeking control through willpower, commandment, force, retribution, and violence. Instead, through the way of tears, we begin with empathy. Empathy with and for things and people and events, which just might be the opposite of judgmentalism. It is hard to be on the attack when you are weeping. He writes that prophets and mystics recognize what most of us do not, that all things have tears and all things deserve tears. The sympathy that wells up when we weep or when we observe others weeping can be life-changing, drawing us out of ourselves and into communion with those around us. I love that line. Tears change the one who weeps and the one who observes another weeping, because we are drawn out of ourselves, out of the focus on the me and the my, and into communion with those around us. And this makes sense from a nervous system perspective. When you are angry and you are in fight or flight mode, you have your foot heavy on the pedal of the sympathetic nervous system. But tears, they shift us out of that heavy engagement with the sympathetic nervous system and into the parasympathetic nervous system, where we are able to feel a sense of calm and a sense of connection to the community around us. This is why tears are powerful tools. Tears release all of the pent-up emotion, and tears soften the body. And tears help us see things more clearly. It makes sense that our tears would offer us a way to cleanse the movie that we have created that is narrowly focused, inappropriately narrowly focused on all of the negative about the person or the experience. That tears help dissolve the clouds that are blocking the clear view of the mind. Well, I recently experienced a deep sense of sadness that leads to tears. And I'll have to say to you that I am not a person who cries easily. If I'm going to cry in my closet so that no one can see me. I don't have a great relationship with tears. And so this study is really helping me see tears in a new light. Well, I had been ranting and raging about the very evident and very loud spoken sense of racism in our country. Now, I've been aware that racism is in the air that we breathe. It's in the water that we drink. It is the very foundation of our society. It is the way in which we began to quickly and easily prosper as a people. But I had been so focused on ranting and raging against this inappropriate, loud-spoken racism that's always been there, but for now, some reason, we are putting a spotlight on it and making it okay to say certain things or to treat people in certain ways. But then our son, he wanted to watch a movie called The Butler. And if you haven't watched it, I encourage you to watch it. I'm not going to ruin it for you today. But as I watched the movie, and as it came to a close, the tears began to stream down my face. First, very quietly, just privately for myself. And then it was a deep, guttural weeping that I had no control over and that went on, and my family did not know what to do. Mom doesn't cry like this. What is happening? What I didn't realize is that I had all of this pent up emotion, all of this anger, this deep sadness, and I couldn't find my way through it to know how to engage in a compassionate way. And the tears allowed me to cleanse all of that. And a couple of days later, I realized, wow, okay, now I know what I feel called to do what I feel called to do to address this racism. Where I felt stuck before, I now knew that joining this group, singing resistance, was the way that I could protest peacefully and from a very grounded state. Well, tears helped Amos cleanse his message. And he got to the point that God really wanted him to share with the people, which was seek God and live. Seek the good and not evil. Amos reminds the people that they will experience the consequences of these systems that they put in place that were exploiting the poor, and that God's love is always with them, working to heal them and to bring them back to their land. Well, my friends, the first step on this journey of following the prophets is to become aware of the things that we are carrying, not judging or shaming ourselves, but bringing a kind awareness to all that we carry and allowing our tears to point us to what matters most. And so I invite you to consider these questions. What am I carrying? What is pent up inside of me that feels stuck? Or what has grown so heavy that I no longer even realize the weight that I'm carrying around? Or what emotion have I judged instead of listened to? And maybe consider, what would it look like to set this down, even briefly, or to ease back, even 1%? I invite you to take a moment of silent reflection, or to pull out your journal and to begin to reflect on your response to the message found with the prophet Amos.